The Powers Project.
Hari, it's nice to meet you. All the way from India.
Yeah,
What part of India are you from?
I live in Kerala, India. It's really South India.
Is it hot there like it is here?
Yeah, it can get really hot, but now it's monsoon, so
Oh, is it?
it's relatively calm.
So I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of that. Again, forgive my ignorance. I didn't know that India had a monsoon season. But it does, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We are more likely, we don't like the sun here. Most people don't like the sun here.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah, it gets uncomfortably hot.
yeah. Well, I'm from Florida, and it seems that way as well. Even though I will say, and I don't know if it's because of climate change or whatever, we've been having some very moderate springs because there's times in Florida where it can get extremely hot, like in March, and you don't have any reprieve from that until next November. And lately, during the spring,
Yeah.
we've had some cool days and it's been pleasant. So I can appreciate that. That whole I don't like the sun that much sometimes. Um, so the reason you're with me today is we're doing another segment of Facebook Friends question mark because you're a friend of mine on Facebook. We've never met
Yeah.
until now. We've had some encounters on Facebook where we've agreed many times on many topics, and we've disagreed on other topics. And one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is that even when we've disagreed, you've always kept a civil uh, tone to our conversations. There was never any resorting to name calling just because we disagreed with one another, which we know it can be hard to find people like that nowadays because it seems like that's the first thing a lot of people resort to is they don't have a real basis for their argument, and so the first thing they do is call you a name because you've upset them because you
Yeah.
disagree with them. So and you've never resorted to that, so I've always appreciated having a conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. I do believe when we are having political discussion, if you want to get your point across, I think if you're like, it depends. Like I do believe profanity has a place in political activism, but it's not when it's like one-on-one conversation. It's not its place. Profanity,
Right.
So
Exactly. Yeah, I've never found it to help at all. Like you're never going to convince somebody of your point when the first thing you do is call them a moron or whatever it might be that comes out of your mouth. You kind of shut people down at that point.
yeah, I agree with that.
So today, you and I sort of had a discussion on Facebook, and while this wasn't the exact title, it was relevant to this title, and that is, do we believe that and let's make sure we let people know that those who aren't gay, that June is Gay Pride Month, and so in the spirit
Yeah.
since it's June, in the spirit of Gay Pride Month, I decided for us to talk about this topic that you and I had a disagreement on, which is, does kink belong at Gay Pride? You were on the side of
Yeah.
yes, and I was on the side of no. So, um, so let's go ahead and let's start the discussion off there. If you would explain why you believe that it should be part of gay pride and what that looks like to you.
Well, for me, gay pride, when you say gay pride, pride should be a movement from where I'm standing. It is a movement against status quo. It is pride that actually started as a riot in Stonewall, and it was pioneered by trans woman of color who was also a sex worker. And so I don't think we started by throwing bricks at police. So I don't think decency and by by the definition of decency by general society has a place in pride. We don't have to tone down our gayness and our kink. Like kink community has been there, like Leatherman and Bikeman has been there since the beginning of Pride. They stood by us during our sexual liberation movement and our fight against HIV. So they've been there by our side, and I don't think it's fair to, shame them or to banish them from the movement to please, needs of common society or to make the Pride more family friendly or corporate friendly. That is what's happening right now. Pride is more than anything a corporate event at least in big cities. So I don't think that's not what Pride is about. And I even if you see Pride as a political movement is supposed to be outrageous. It is supposed to be edgy. It is supposed to be attention catching. The whole point of having a political movement or a political protest is to gather attention. And if you have to be edgy for that, be edgy. I don't see a problem with it as long as it doesn't violate other people.
Okay, so that's where I had the issue about it violating other people. But before I get into that, let's take a step back what you just said. So a political movement is supposed to be edgy. But once we've achieved what we've set out to achieve politically, do you believe that we are supposed to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until we go beyond what? Because here's how I see it. We as gay people should continue to push for equal rights, and because we still don't we now can marry, but you can still, in certain parts of the country, you still can't adopt children, you still can be denied housing, you can be denied a job. Those places are becoming smaller and smaller, but until we're completely protected the way other minority groups are, we're not equal. So I do believe that we still have those things that we need to overcome and continue pushing that agenda. But do we need to push it to the level like we have in the past? Now that it's sort of like when you get someone's attention and now they're paying attention to you, do you still beat them over the head even though they're still now paying attention to you? And I think that's the issue that a lot of people have, is that we don't need to be as edgy. We don't need to be as pushy because we now have the attention of the people.
I would argue we don't, actually, because yes, we have marriage right in the United States. In India, we have achieved the right to love. We were criminalized like 5 years ago, and we have the right to adopt in the United States. So I do see some things that you said is accurate, but we have not, I don't think even in US, we have achieved true equality. I mean, still 40% of homeless youth is LGBTQ. And it is because society has not progressed to the level we want it to. So when I say political change, I also mean social, anything that is social and economic change. We are still, when you consider we are still likely to be poor or under poverty wages, we are still more likely to not being able to go to college, because we get kicked out of our home very early, especially if you're intersex, especially if you're transgender. You're more likely to be disowned by your parents, and you're less likely to be able to go to college and get a decent job. So I do think that's also an issue. And this whole thing is about sexual liberation. So sexuality does play a big role in gay liberation movement and gay pride. Now, it is important to take pride in ourselves and the achievement of a movement, but I would say it is not, accurate to say that we have achieved what is set out to, because we are far away from it. Not to mention when your political bodies are giving, what US is currently arming, giving arms to 70% of dictatorship. Overwhelming majority is, cracking down on LGBT community. So it is not accurate to say we have politically achieved everything, even in US. When your political body is simply pandering to the LGBT community and arming people who are even executing gay people in the street. So
and that's what I agree with you. Like I said, we haven't reached complete equality yet. We don't have the protection that we have 100%. And I agree, and I think we should still be pushing towards achieving that full equality and full citizenship, if you will, because I don't think straight people understand sometimes what it feels like to be treated like a second-class citizen in your own country, because it doesn't occur to them that that's what's going on, and yet that's exactly what's going on. And so I'm in complete agreement with that. And as far as what we're doing as far as the dictatorships, I think it's important that we understand that much of what this country does, and a lot of it being wrong, it's not because of the gay issue. It's because of other issues.
I know.
That just happens to be, something that gets caught up in it. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
So,
but
go ahead.
I'm saying if we have that moral fiber, like if you morally disagree with a brand, let's say a brand is, using child labor to increase their productivity. And if someone is morally have a moral objection towards child labor, the obvious thing would be to boycott that brand, to stop giving your money towards that brand. I do think countries should do that. I am a proponent of BDS movement because, I do think Israel is violating Palestinian rights and they should be held accountable. So if I believe in that, I should also believe in the humanity of gay people across the world. And I should also believe that, my country and every other country who support the humanity of gay people and trans people across the world should stop funding the countries or stop especially giving military aids to countries that actually killing gay people, Well, so that should play a role in it.
I completely agree. But I'm also a realist, and I understand that that's not, they don't, because when our government does something, it's for their own benefit. And if it gets caught up that, that these countries have the worst human rights, records, if it benefits them, whether it's because of power, whether it's money, oil, whatever it may be, those things aren't even in their, it's not even in their peripheral. They're not even thinking about how they treat gay people. They could care less. What they care about is that, for instance, Saudi Arabia plays ball with us. And so as long as Saudi Arabia plays ball with us and they're an ally to us in the Middle East, they're going to send money to Saudi Arabia. They're going to send money to Israel. They're going to send money wherever these people are on our team, regardless of what their human rights records are, because that's not even a thought to them. So I completely agree, but I know that that's not going to be a factor, in their decision making, unfortunately. And I agree, we need to push to make that a factor. But the honest truth is that when this country gets it, when the government, I should say, not this country, when the government decides to do something, they don't care who the collateral damage is.
I agree, and that's why I said, as a movement, we have not achieved what we set out to achieve. Gay liberation movement is sexual liberation movement per se, because gay liberation movement is a part of sexual liberation movement, is supposed to sexually liberate every individual on the planet. That's what the movement is about. And we have not. So I don't think it is, out of norm to be outrageous, according to what normal society, which is the decency and decorum and everything from my perspective, is defined by, well, colonizing forces. That's what it is. And we would be, it would be foolish to say that colonization still don't play a role in our culture, because what is decent, the decorum in our society, or overwhelming majority of the time, is defined by what is considered decent back in that day. There was a time when women speaking up was not considered decent. There was a time when queer people just existing was considered indecent. There was a time when trans people were considered indecent. And that is basically was exported from colonial Britain. And that was the case in India, because before colonization, India had, I wouldn't say India embraced LGBTQ community, because we had our own class issues, but we didn't marginalize people because they're trans people. We didn't marginalize people because they're LGBTQ people. We were more like modern day America, where if you're poor and you happen to be gay, then you're screwed. That was kind of our system. But if you're somewhat doing well, which is a minority of people, and you're gay or trans, then you are well accepted in our country. And when during colonization, everything besides like vaginal sex was criminalized. So I think that similar kind of moment happened in Africa, many regions in Africa, that laws were passed in many regions in Africa. And I think some of them still exist. It's a process like, if I remember correctly, Nigeria still has that law in place. Many countries do give death penalty because of their colonial roots. So I do think our decency, but especially when you talk about decorum and decency, whenever it's the working class people and the minority and people of color, queer people, when they act out of frustration, when they protest, it's a matter of decency, it's a matter of decorum. Even in congressional hall, you have to wear, what's considered, Western outfit. When United States is not a land of Westerners, it's a land of indigenous people. And instead of embracing or instead of accepting those roots, and instead of being a true place for diversity, you guys still are, saying that your elected representatives who represent whole people has to wear the clothes of colonialism. So colonizers. So I do think those kind of rules, those set of normality has deep colonial roots. And I do think as queer people, as if we are our pioneers, as I said, our pioneers are people who were considered to be, unacceptable and outlaws in our society for just existing. There were trans women of color who was also a sex worker, who was living with AIDS. So these people, as a movement that is like originated from those people, actions of those people, we should push back against what's status quo. We should expand the horizon of what is acceptable in society. I don't think nudity or a little bit of extra flesh in a pride parade is a problem. I don't think any part of nudity is a problem. I mean, in many cities like San Francisco, public nudity is allowed to an extent. Even in Italy, public nudity is, a country like Italy, public nudity is allowed to an extent, and civilization in Italy is doing just fine. So I don't think that's gonna, crumble our social institution.
Those are very good points. So here's where the pushback comes from me, is that I agree that that these terms need to be pushed And because, as you said, being gay was indecent, being trans was indecent, being, there's many things, women speaking up was indecent. All these things that are now in our past, that once was
Mhm.
illegal, even. These things
Mhm.
are falling by the wayside because there was a pushback against these things.
Mhm.
Now, as far as decency and as far as the colonialism that you speak about and the definitions that were defined, that these words were defined by them, this is the same.
Mhm.
I think it's important that we make this point, that for all the bad things that we talk about colonialism, we also have to realize this is
Mhm.
the same system that is allowing us, for the first time in history, to have minority groups speak up against the group that is in power. Before this, any group that was in power would just simply squash the minority so that they had no voice and never would have a voice. This system is is I believe set up so that it can right itself as we go along, because it allows you and I to have a voice. It allows blacks to have a voice, people of color to have a voice, women to have a voice. Now we have to fight for it and we have to push for it, but at least we're not being killed for speaking up. You look at what's going on in China right now, and even in Hong Kong, and how they're squashing any type of rebellion whatsoever and just silencing these people because they're not going to give them a chance to rise up against the government. They're going to shut their voices down before they even get started, and they have the ability and will do that. And this country could do the same thing, but they don't. And so, to their credit, they're at least saying, look, these people have, and there's a group of people, because this is a mistake I think minorities tend to make sometimes. We believe that we achieved what we have because of our actions, and in part that is correct, but I think it's a huge mistake if we think that we got to where we're at today by ourselves. If we don't understand that we had a large amount of supporters who were white and who were male and female and heterosexual, that weren't behind us and helped us, we would never be where we're at today without their help. And I think it's silly for us to believe that we would be, because we don't have the numbers. If they wanted to fight back, if straight America said, no, you guys you're not going to have your rights, that we wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. We don't have the numbers to do anything about it by ourselves. So we had to have allies, and those allies we're not just white people, they're straight people. So I think we need to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves thinking that we accomplished all these things simply by our own doing, if you will.
But I'm saying colonialism doesn't equate white people. Yes, white people were part of colonialism in the 19th century, but modern day colonialism is done by people of all races, depends on the region looked at. For example, Chinese occupation of Tibet is a form of colonialism. And Israel occupying Palestine is a form of colonialism. So it doesn't mean it is more than just a black and white issue. And I'm not alienating heterosexual people. I'm saying this is a gay space, and our King brothers and sisters has been a part of our movement since the beginning, since there was, gay liberation movement was hugely unpopular and were not even discussed. I mean, our people were dying from HIV and AIDS epidemic, and we were not even part of national discourse back then. So it's all about gay bashing. Back in the day, it was all about gay bashing, and it was about bashing people who suffers from addiction. And that was the extent of HIV epidemic coverage back in media. So I don't think system helped us achieve anything. I think that's not the accurate way to put it. When the system opposed us, we had to break the system. Actually, whether it's any kind of labor movement, whether it's any kind of movement for equal rights, civil rights movement, whether it's women's right to vote, whether it's Roe v. Wade, whether it's civil rights movement like LGBTQ movement, or or Black people's right to vote, people actually had to break the system, and oftentimes violently break the system in order to achieve what they're fighting for. And that was the thing about BLM movements too. I do think rioting has a place in political movements. Peaceful protest can only do so much. Voting, even less. I mean, I don't think voting barely matters in modern day, because voting actually voting might, in a corrupt political system, voting might, prevent what's inevitable, fall of civilization, but it doesn't progress society per se. Well, for example, even in US politics, and it's similar in India, but I'm referring to US politics, so most people who listens to this can understand. You have one party that is villainized, and rightfully so, and one party that is good. Arguably, I mean, they said they're good, but it's kind of like Coke and Diet Coke.
Exactly. They're both the same.
It's kind of like Coke and Diet Coke.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's like, you can pander to us all we want, but where is the legislative process? The gay rights, gay people's right to marriage was not achieved by representatives who are voting. It was achieved in court. We had to take it to court, and it was achieved because our movement, where straight people also played a role in it. But it is important to make the movement our own. Straight people, they're more than welcome to join the movement, but we're not going to change the movement. We are not going to marginalize people among our own self, because we don't understand what they're into. And that's what straight people did to us back in 60s and 70s, because they don't understand our sexual preferences, they don't understand our sexual practices, so they marginalize what they fear. If I'm not into a kink scene, that's fine. I don't have to go to an 18 plus event in Pride, or I don't have to get involved in a kink scene. I'm not forced to get involved in the kink scene. I can wear a t-shirt and a jeans and wave a rainbow flag in the gay pride parade if I want to. Nobody will question that. But I don't have to, diss the kink crew for that. I don't have to diss drag crew for that, for doing, I can not be a part of you and still fight for your rights. I can not be a part of you and still say that you still belong in this movement. You are still an essential part of this movement. And especially when one of the colors in a pride flag is for sexuality, and that is and when you fight for sexuality, you cannot say, okay, this type of sexuality or this type of sexual representation has no place in pride. But we are fighting for sexual liberation. There's like saying free speech should be, it's kind of like saying free speech should be limited. Same goes to free expression. What shows in pride, as long as nobody's being violated, is a part of free expression. And I don't think there is anything fundamentally wrong with people expressing nudity, whether it's, if people having sex in public or sex in front of children, that's a whole different conversation to have. I would say that is borderline violating. But if you're like not okay with it, don't take your kids to 18 plus events in Pride. That's all I'm saying. Don't take, for example, San Francisco has a event called Folsom, which is exclusively a kink event. So don't take your kids to that event and expect us to change the event for the kid. It's kind of like saying you're taking your kids to an adult store and telling them to hide out the dildos because kid is here.
Right.
And that's not how it's going to work. Don't take a kid. As a
Right.
parent, it's your responsibility to control the environment of your kid, and don't put it on us, because this is our space for this designated time and in designated space. It's a pride happens at a designated time in a designated space, and during that time and that space is reserved for us. So if you're bringing your children in, you're exposing your children into that environment, and that is on the parent. That is my point. That is not on us to set the example. It is not up to us to raise your kids. That's on you.
I don't think
That's my point.
so. I don't think you'll get any disagreement from most people. You won't get it from me. That's not the issue I have. But let me go back, because you hit on many topics. First off, again, you didn't break the system. We did not break the system. We challenged the system. The system is set up to allow us to challenge it. If it weren't, we would be broken. We didn't have the numbers to break the system. It's just like during the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King understood that in order for his movement to take hold and to have an effect, that he had to bring the hearts of white people into this movement in order for it to be able to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. So every time they had a protest, he made sure everybody who was there was in a suit and tie or in a dress. They didn't go out in jeans and t-shirts, because he wanted to impress on white America that we are people, that we are civilized, and that, where white people could look at them and see them being hosed down with these fire hoses and attacked by dogs, and feel sympathy for them because they could relate to them. And so he understood the importance that this movement wasn't going to succeed without white society being behind him and helping to move this movement forward. So, again, I think we're overrating our abilities when we say we broke the system, because we didn't break it. We have a system that allows us to challenge it. That's what we did. We made them uncomfortable. But again, in throughout history, whenever minority groups made the government uncomfortable, they were simply squashed. They didn't have a voice and wasn't given a voice. So we're very fortunate to be in a system where we do have a voice, and we can make people uncomfortable who are in power. And I think we should do that. With that being said,
I'm just like you're saying. Go on.
so,
Sorry, I just had a straight up phone.
no, that's okay. So with that being said, there are certain definitions of words that were set up for us to live by. When we challenge things, and as we've said, there's goodness in challenging these things, so that we can say that so that we can make it so that being gay is no longer a crime, that it's not indecent to be gay, that it's not a mental disorder, that we fight for these things. But at what point do we stop pushing? Because here's what's happening, because you said to the effect that we didn't want to do to straight society what they did to us, which was to be oppressive, to fear us because they didn't understand us. And yet we have an arm of the gay movement, and it's a very small arm. It's mostly extremists and activists who want to do exactly what straight society had done to us. And I don't know if they feel justified because it was done to us, because they feel like they were oppressed as a people. But they're fighting to take rights away from straight people. And it's like, that's not our goal. That shouldn't be our goal. Our goal would be to have equal rights, not to take rights away from straight people. So, for instance, there's religious freedom in this country, as you know. And so as someone who's religious, they should be able to practice their religion. And even if we don't agree with it, we shouldn't be able to tell them you're not allowed to believe this. It's their belief. And whether I agree with it or not, if I don't believe in it, then I'm not going to be a member of their church. It's that simple. But to tell them they can't believe in it is taking their rights away, just as they attempted to take ours away years ago. And so I see this this hypocrisy in the gay community where they think they're justified because they believe they're right. And this is what happened to us, is that the right, religious right, believed that they were right, and that they knew better than us, and that's why they should oppress us. And we're doing the same thing. And I think it's dangerous when we start falling into becoming the oppressors ourselves now. And that's what's beginning to happen. So when we tried to redefine things like common decency, I had actually had a guy tell me, oh, that's a heteronormative, idea. And I go, since when did what did common decency become heteronormative? Why is it just that, only this is a term for straight people? We have to understand that when these terms were defined, it wasn't to keep gay people in check. It was to keep everyone in check, because we have to understand, in order for society to exist, we are going to give up certain rights in order for us to be able to live amongst other people. So if I'm somebody who thinks it's okay to kill people who disagree with me, society says you can't do that. But I'm saying, but you're oppressing me because I believe I should be able to do it. I believe I'm right. So no matter what system you're under, no matter what ideology you're under, it's going to be oppressive, and someone's going to be marginalized because
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Hold on.
All right. Is it? Let me know when it gets better.
You broke up after no matter what system you're under.
Yeah, so no matter what system or ideology you're under, someone's going to be oppressed and someone's going to be marginalized. Even in the system that you're talking about, which is basically postmodernism or a nihilistic sort of system, which is my individual rights, I should be able to define what these words mean to me. So common decency to me means I can walk around naked in public, and that's fine. Now, I may even agree with you that I think that's common decency as well. But as society goes, they're saying, no, that's not the rules. So we can push back and to get these words redefined to where it means maybe something different because the times have changed. Okay. But I think the point, the part where I parted with you is like, where do we stop? And you said, it's one thing if you're out in public and you're nude, you think that's okay. But having sex in the street, that's, then we have to go back and look at that. But I will tell you, there are people out there, and I assure you there are, who think having sex in the street is fine as well. And so where do we start? Where do we draw the line? And here's the thing. You said something about we should push to evolve. And I go, I agree with you. But when we get to a point where we start devolving and we start behaving like animals in the wild, I think we've gone too far. And if we're walking around the streets, with our ass hanging out and our junk hanging out, the same way baboons do in the forest, I think that we're no longer evolving. We're going backwards. And I go, we need to take a look at ourselves and go, hey, maybe we've come as far as we need to go, and maybe we need to put a stop to it for right now, and let's reevaluate things.
I disagree with many points you made. First off, it's never a person's right to kill everyone who disagrees with them, because as I said, as long as it doesn't violate other people, it should be acceptable.
Well, let me wait.
Number two, having sex in public.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if I feel, because you're saying as long as it doesn't hurt, it doesn't affect other people. But what if I feel that their behavior is affecting?
No, I said violate.
Okay.
Violate other people.
Okay, so violate other people. So what if I feel like what they're doing violates me?
What do you mean?
What I mean is what if I feel like their behavior, like let's say, for instance, nowadays, it used to be back in the day, and I'm going to sound so old, but it used to be back in the day, people weren't as stupid because if they were, they kept it to themselves. Nowadays, they can say the stupidest things, be as insulting, even in public, and they try to act like they're tough. But the only reason they act this way is because they know there's very seldom there's ever going to be consequences to their words or their actions, because all they have to do is call the police. They call the police for every stupid little thing nowadays. So I might go, "Oh, you're a jackass." And you go, "What?" I mean, for no reason, I might just hit you and just not like the way you look and call you a jackass. And they're back in the day, you would go, "What's your problem?" And they go, "You're my problem. I can't stand your face." Well, back in the day, there would be an altercation. And if the cops were called, they would go, "What happened?" "Well, this guy called me a jackass for no reason." And they would go, "Did you do that?" And you would say, "Yes." And they go, "Well, you deserve to get your ass beat." But see, no one does that anymore. And so we have a bunch of stupid people walking around running their mouth. So what if someone says something to me and I feel that violated me, their words violated me, okay? And I go, "You deserve to get your ass beat now." And so you violated me. So now I have a right to take care and protect myself against that violation. And this is where the danger comes in, is that when we're allowed to start redefining words to fit our own personal definition, we start losing control of everything. And I think that's the danger. So can you see that point?
I mean, I see what you're saying, but my point is like, if you're not forced to have sex with them, if you're not forced to have, if you're not being touched in a private parade by them, if you're not being ejaculated on or something like that by people who are having sex, that's what I meant when you're not being violated. It's not so much of a slur per se, because that's like, marginalized communities will always be marginalized. We will never be, I don't think, even in my lifetime, I don't think we will see true equality in my lifetime. All we could do is push for it as hard as we can. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. What I'm trying to say is kink is defined by anything that is out of normal sexual behavior. That is what kink is. Everybody has kink. Even straight people have kink. Some people like big boobs. Some people like big butts. They have kink. Even that is considered kink. So anything that is outside of the normal penis, vagina, sexual behavior is kink. If you're considered gay people, there was a time when we were considered kink or fetish. There was a time when homosexuality and being trans considered kink and fetish. So kink has an ever-evolving definition. And to say that kink doesn't belong in pride, if you're saying that back in the day, that would mean that gay people don't belong in pride, because we were seen as abnormal back in the day. We were seen as outcast and illegal back in the day. And that's what I meant by breaking the system. By breaking the system, I mean, there was a system that stayed in place to oppress us sexually. And we broke that system, and we broke it violently. We didn't break it by peaceful protest. That's not how we didn't break it by voting for the right candidate. We didn't break it by running a campaign. We broke it violently. And oftentimes, we need to be not so nice to, we shouldn't worry about not being nice, or we shouldn't worry about being polite, or we shouldn't worry about offending other people's eyes because the way we express ourselves, especially in a gay space. A gay space should be a safe place for every queer people that is participating, whether it's kink people, whether it's asexual people who don't want anything to do with anything sexual. There should be a place for even extreme perverts and people who don't want to have sex at all can coexist. That is the beauty of pride. Pride is about diversity. It's not about everyone wearing jeans and t-shirts. And that's why we have family-friendly events. Where family-friendly events exist, people with kink, they usually stay away from it because 18 plus events are a separate thing. You can go to an 18 plus events and you will see things that you might not want your child exposed to. Depends on your child's age. Unless you had like a detailed conversation, like a 16-year-old who had detailed conversation about sexuality, fetishes with their parents, who understand what's going on, I would say don't take your kids, don't even allow your kid, like forbid your kid from going into an 18 plus event because you will see some scarring things there. But people are into it. That is their space. So it is best if you don't take your children then, and do not use your values, do not choose your parenting values. So isolate people of our own community while coming into our own space. If that is your value, we respect that. We're not expecting you to, bring your kids and watch everything we do. We are saying that keep your children away. We're going to do our thing here. And you can come here when Pride is over. That's fine. When an 18 plus event is not happening here, you can bring anyone over. That's fine. You have family-friendly events. You have corporate events of Pride where kids are more than welcome, where people are wearing jeans and t-shirts and nothing more than that. And take your children there. That's my point. And Pride is about diversity where people can wear or express whatever they want. So, and it should be that way.
All right. So again, let me just reiterate this one point, because I completely disagree with you. And you keep saying we broke the system. We did not break the system. The system was set up to be challenged. What we did was break down certain groups. And again, it wasn't even that we broke them. We made them uncomfortable. You can't look at Stonewall or even ACT UP and say we violently took our rights, because we didn't. Those were moderately violent, and then I'm saying moderately because there was a little pushback. There wasn't any real violence. We didn't have any sort of battle or war where people were killed out in the streets because of our rights. So we didn't violently take them back. We pushed back. We made them uncomfortable. But again, without white or straight society, not even white society, straight society having our backs and helping us push through this, we wouldn't have achieved anything. We needed to be the catalyst. We needed to be the initial group. And I agree with that. And I even agree with you that there's times where we need to push back violently. I don't think the civil rights movement would have achieved what it did if it wasn't for the Black Panthers. I think that white society saw, well, we have the Black Panthers, we have Martin Luther King. Who do we want to deal with? We're going to have to deal with one of them. So let's deal with Martin because he seems to be more rational. And so, but they would have never even wanted to deal with Martin if it wasn't for the Black Panthers. And so I see what you're saying, and I completely agree with that. But I think it's important to know that without straight society, we wouldn't have achieved what we have. Just like the civil rights movement wouldn't have achieved what it had if it didn't have white society behind it and helping push those rights. Now, what you keep saying about
my point is, I wouldn't say straight society. I would say straight allies. I would say white society. I would say white allies. And we had white allies in Indian independence struggles too.
Right.
But again, by system, I don't mean the liberal capitalist system. I meant the homophobic system, the homophobic legal system that stayed in place for specifically oppressing minorities in favor of religious groups. We broke down that system, and the system, I don't mean government system or anything. It's just a social structure that we broke down.
Okay.
We broke down a social structure of patriarchy. Yeah.
All right. That I can agree with. If that's what you're talking about as far as system, I completely agree with you. Now let's get back to the main point. Is that you're saying that if it's an 18 plus event, then you shouldn't bring your children. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. What I think that the disagreement came with, and what you and I disagreed on, is that Pride Parade is not an 18 plus event. It is for everybody. And while I agree, I think all kinks should be represented. That if regardless of what you belong to, it is part of our sexuality, and they have been part of this from day one. Whether it's drag queens, whether it's cross dressers, or whoever, they all should be able to be proud of who they are and be represented in the parade. My point, and I think the point of many people, is that be representative, but you don't need to represent yourself by having your ass and your junk hanging out while you're in the parade, because the parade is not an 18 plus event. It is a family friendly event. And when you say, well, this is my expression, what you're saying is that your freedom of expression is more important than what society has deemed to be decent, and that children don't need to be exposed to that. Now, regardless of where you fall on nudity and things of that nature, there are, what I see is a divide. There are gay people who think that it's all about them and what they think is right by them. Then you have gay people who have families and who have children. And as someone who is a parent, I understand they're saying, look, I'm glad that you feel this freedom of expression, and you should be able to have that right. But wait till you get to the 18 plus events. You don't need to show your ass. You don't need to show your junk while you're out in the pride parade, because now you're not being considerate of anyone except yourself. And to me, that's just wrong. When you only consider what you think is important, and you don't consider the other people there, they are your brothers and sisters, that you don't care what they think. And I think there's a way to have your expression of saying, this is who I am, regardless of who it is, without having to show your ass, because to me, now you're just an exhibitionist who's just looking for attention. Go to the 18 plus event.
The whole point of pride is to seek attention. The whole point of pride is to seek visibility, which is essentially seeking attention. So I'd say do it, but my point is, if it's not an 18 plus event, I don't have a problem with people wearing jockstraps. I don't think any part of human body, even if they're buck naked in a family friendly event, I don't think a part of human body should be taboo. There's nothing to censor. You cannot have censorship and free expression, or censorship or free speech coexist. That is not, where do we draw the line? There's going to be people who are not comfortable with drag people. There's going to be people who are not comfortable with trans people. There's going to be people who are not comfortable with people who have a little bit of curve, So when you're starting to censor people, it's just, you're going to have to start censoring more and more. It's never going to end at just kink people, first of all. That is a problem number one with that. Number two, no, if you're bringing your children into an LGBTQ space, you should talk to your children about it, because they will see, depends on where you live. I mean, in India, when you go to a pride event, you are not going to see nudity. Even once I wore a harness to Indian event and I got kicked out, because India has notoriously anti-kink event, because our censorship law is, extremely anti-gay, and we are still in this colonial mindset where we're trying to meet expectations of, what decency is set by Western standards, when, well, at the time it was enforced upon us, and we still follow the standard, as I said. But it is problematic, and I'm saying that we shouldn't have to meet their expectations. If you don't want your kids to see kink events, if you don't want to see people wearing jock straps and leather, if you don't want your kids to be exposed to that, don't take your kids to Pride. It's not.
But that's not. Yeah, but see, now what you've done is you've hijacked Pride to say, if you don't want these things, don't come. What if they say, if you don't want to keep your ass in your pants, you don't come? Because now what you've done, and I think this is what we have to disconnect, is what you've done as you have denied them their freedom of expression. You've denied them, you've marginalized them, you've oppressed them because they won't buy into your ideology. This is where I say all ideologies,
No, I haven't.
yeah, you have, because now you're saying if you don't want
No,
if you don't want to see my ass, if you don't want to see my junk, then don't come. So now you're marginalizing them, saying that what they want
yeah,
doesn't matter because you're denying them their
no.
yes. That's exactly what you just said.
I don't have a problem with them. I don't have a problem with them coming in here and trying to kick me out of Pride. As long as they don't do that, they can coexist. I don't mind that.
But
They're so offended by it because that is the price for free speech and free expression. You're going to offend someone. Offending someone is not as equal as violating someone. There's a major difference there. Offending someone is subjective. Violation is an objective standard to me.
okay, so but it's not a violation just because they say, look, when you're in public, keep your pants on. That's not a violation of you. Nobody's violating you. They're just simply saying that this is this is what we consider to be decent in public. Don't violate those rules. That's that simple. And I don't understand why that's such a challenge for some people to, at least during Pride Parade, when you know there are kids there, it's like, why would you want to expose children to that? And now if you don't feel like there's anything wrong with that, I get that, but we have look in a society there. You said they can't coexist, that you can't have freedom of expression and you can't have a censorship. You have to. There has to be a limit on free expression. Rousseau, who's one of the greatest philosophers that talks about society, has said that when we belong to a society, it is automatically known that there are certain freedoms that we're going to give up in order to be part of that society. Because if we don't, then there is no society. What you have is anarchy. And then what you have is complete chaos where there are no rules, there are no laws, there are no boundaries. And then, like I said, you say, because you think that your boundaries, that as long as it doesn't violate someone, then that should be okay. Well, what if I say, I think you should be able to violate people? When you start allowing people to go past a certain limit, it becomes chaos. It becomes anarchy. And now we have no rules. So you can't say, well, I think my rules are sensible, because someone else is going to come along and say, I think your rules are oppressive. Do you understand the danger that as we continue to push this envelope, that there's going to be a point of no return if we don't stop?
I don't agree with that thought process at all. Because once of all, we don't have that kind of situation here. Like,
but
excessive speech is not. What?
We're going towards that. Do you not see that when we start?
No.
Yes.
No. What we're moving towards is excessive censorship. It's not excessive speech. We don't have only way to solve any problems with free speech is to have more free speech. Yeah. Like, you're not gonna get, for example, we have BDS laws, anti-BDS laws in many states in the US. That's a censorship law. We have, even in Florida, I just saw a story on Facebook early this morning, a man with a bumper sticker of "I eat ass," and he was charged for it by the police. I eat ass, putting that as a bumper sticker. Yeah, it will offend people. If kids will see it, parents should be, it will cringe parents. But it is the price to pay for free speech.
Okay, so
not everyone, you cannot.
Okay, so let's talk about that just for a second, because even though I consider myself on the left lately has been the group who's more against free speech than anybody. We have been pushing back against free speech, that you can't, for instance, the trans pronouns that people want to be used, that they want used. Now, there's a movement, and has been a movement, and it's already hit through Canada and England, that there's been this movement that if you don't use the proper pronouns that a trans person wants you to use, you could be fined. Now, so you're
Yeah.
telling me you're legislating my free speech, that if I don't want to use those pronouns, that you're going to fine me, and you're legislating my free speech because they don't want me to be able to speak what I want to say. I have to say what they want to say. So we're being hypocrites when we say, oh, we want free speech. When what we really mean is we want free speech for us, but you guys need to fall in line and say what we want you to say. And you can't have that. If free speech is free speech, then it's for everybody, not just one group, not just the group that's in power.
I agree with that sentiment. Free speech should not be dictated upon people. If someone wants to call someone a slur, they shouldn't have, government shouldn't play a role in it. That's the definition of free speech. If people want to say something, government shouldn't play a role in it, trying to dictate what they can and cannot say. And I do think, dictating pronouns and government getting involved is that's not how to go about it. I do think that's a violation of free speech. I agree with you on that point. But the thing is, you don't have a problem like calling your car her. You don't have a problem calling your gun a her. You have a problem with calling a trans woman her now. That's the logic of it doesn't make sense, and it's clearly transphobic. But the thing is, the right takes it to a further and call like cancel culture, which is basically a boycott movement on social media. If you don't agree with my moral standards, I will boycott you. That's fine by me. That's not the government taking actions. And the right call it cancel culture.
That's not what it is.
Right?
That's not what it is. And here's the thing. It's like, you're right. Here's
I understand. I understand. When the government's getting involved, I understand.
Right.
But people can if you don't think people, you can boycott it. That's your free speech. Right. If you don't stand for pride, if you don't understand what pride is standing for, if you think that is against your moral values, you should boycott pride. Or you can just suck it up and be part of pride. But that's up to you. That's completely your prerogative.
Yeah, but that's not what cancel culture is. Cancel culture isn't about just simply boycotting. Cancel culture is about getting you shut down so you no longer have a voice, which is that they're trying to limit your freedom of speech because they don't like what you have to say, and they want to get you out of the public eye so that your voice can no longer be heard. That's cancel culture. And but here's the thing, both the left and the right play this game, and both of them
yes, they have.
And both of them feign outrage about cancel culture, and yet they both play it, and they're both hypocrites for doing so. The thing is,
yes, they do. But the thing is, cancel culture is like boycott movement means capitalism. That's what it is. Let's say Tommy Lauren went on air and said something that conservative didn't like. They started canceling her. Now her employer wants to fire her because he or she is not getting the views or the social media engagement because of the whatever she said. Okay, that's how cancel culture suppress people. Let's say an MSNBC host said something transphobic, and this resistant hero Democrats want the resistance movement is a joke because it doesn't mean anything. They want to cancel this host. And they started boycotting this news host, and their employer want to fire her or him to avoid any major public backlash towards the news network. And that's cancel culture made in capitalism. You cannot blame the flaws of capitalism, people trying to save the bottom line, on the boycott movement. People, if I don't want to listen to a news host, I'm not going to listen to a news host. I don't see any problem with people if I don't want to listen to Milo Yiannopoulos, for me, Milo Yiannopoulos is canceled. I'm not going to listen to him. That's not a big problem. Boycott movement has been happening. It is a problem.
All right. So here's my question to you, because now what you're saying is cancel culture is limiting free speech. Because here's the thing, I'm with you. I cannot stand Milo. I loathe the man. I mean, honestly, I think he's the worst of the worst. He's nothing but a grifter. He's somebody who, in my opinion, he's just somebody who's looking for attention and will do and say whatever he needs to make money. And he wants to be a provocateur. That's his shtick. You know, there's not a genuine bone in that man's body. I think he's a hypocrite, and along with many other things. But I also believe that he has a right to say what he has to say. Now, if I don't like Milo, I don't go and say, I want this man canceled. I just personally don't listen to him. That's a boycott. Cancel culture goes beyond that. They want to shut down freedom of speech. And if they don't like your speech, they want to shut you down and silence you forever. That is not boycotting. It's completely different. If you
because when you say it violates free speech, it goes against free speech. First off, free speech is currently defined as, government getting involved in your speech. That's what free speech is. Government dictating preventing government from dictating your speech. That's what free speech is. And I don't think cancel culture has gone as far as saying government getting left, especially cancel culture on the left, has gone as far as saying cancel culture, government should get involved in people's speech. Now, I do think corporations play a big role in cancel culture, especially, I cannot stand Donald Trump, but I don't think he should be taken off of Twitter. That's not, especially when he was a sitting US president. A corporation should not hold power over democratically elected leader. And people can say Russia all they want, but the fact of the matter is he was in the office and it is a democratically elected person, and
right.
It is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
People on
I do think that's. No, I don't think if you don't want to listen to them, don't listen to them. You have the right to call for a boycott movement. That is one thing. But if you're not people who don't want to listen to him, is not going to listen to him. He is going to be part of your movement. For example, you can say Joe Rogan. I disagree with Joe Rogan on many things. Many people do cancel him. I don't. I don't like the guy. I'm a vegan. He bashed vegans almost every week. But I don't like when he does it. But I still listen to the guy, and I disagree with him when I do. But I don't feel the need to cancel the guy because I don't think he is morally reprehensible. He is saying what he thinks, and he's authentic. Many things I hear him say. When I hear him say it is cringeworthy, but at least he's not he's more authentic, and he's not as harmless as a CNN host or an MSNBC host who's pretending like genocides don't exist when it clearly does. So at least he doesn't do that. So I don't. It's completely up to the person.
Okay, so let me address that. So while you say I wouldn't cancel Joe Rogan because I don't like him or I don't agree with him, you know that he's being authentic. He's not like Milo. He's not being a provocateur. He's not just saying things to provoke people. He says what he truly thinks. Now, I happen to agree with a great deal what Joe says, including the veganism. But regardless, while you say I would not cancel Joe Rogan, there are too many on our side who are trying to do exactly that. Now, fortunately, Joe Rogan is too big to get canceled. Dave Chappelle is too big to get canceled. But it stopped them from trying. And the danger is that when they can't cancel people like Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle, they take the next step, which is what they've done in Canada and which they've done in England, which is try to legislate speech to make people say what they want them to say. So this cancel culture is not as innocent and not as threatening as one would like to believe. They're just as bad, if not worse, than if the government were to try to step in, because they're trying to get the government to step in on their behalf, and not so much as to redefine words like violence. For instance, I had a person tell me one time that by using the wrong pronouns, that equates to violence. And I go, you're absolutely out of your mind. It might be rude. It might be offensive. It might be many things. But the one thing it is not is it's not violence. If I punch you in the face, that's violence. And when you call misuse of pronouns violence, what you do is you demean that word. You take the power of that word away to everybody who ever suffered real violence, and you basically made it as if it's nothing. If I can call you because you don't like me and you go, you're a moron, I go, that's violence. I've minimized people who really suffered real violence by saying that what you did to me was violence, because it's not, it can't be compared. So that's
I agree with that.
Right. But
the thing is, like, yeah, in Twitter, I think ALC called it violence when someone called her a bitch on Twitter, and she said it's violence, and I don't agree with that. But again, it's what right wingers don't understand is left wing movement has always been like a fractured movement. Left wing movements is very fractured. Like, as a libertarian Marxist, I don't agree with social democrats. I think collective ownership is the way to go. I don't think taxing the rich and increasing minimum wage sources is great. You all should do that. I think we should go further. So as a left movement, we always been, oh, my headphone is running out of charge. So we always been a group of people who disagrees with each other. And that's the great thing about left-wing movements. Right-wing movements has been super organized. Like, they have two lanes. One is pro-corporation. One is extreme radical right-wing, hateful mobs and everything. Other people only care about power and money. There are two lanes. We are way more fractured, where we do have a lot of left-wing infight. And that is this is the part where we do a lot of infight. And when it comes to free speech and censorship issues, my libertarian side comes up. I don't think speech should be dictated, like, unless you're being like bringing an example like Hitler, who's calling for genocides and everything. That's a different realm of speech, and there is like clear distinctions between calling for violence and what is considered free speech. As I said, violating someone, whether their right to exist is, their right to happiness. That's where I draw the line. Violating people's right. Okay. That's where I draw the line. There is a common sense. Yeah. Okay. Well,
because I want to get to this one point before your battery runs out. All right. So, I could go round and round and tell you and say, look, what you're okay.
Look, what you're okay. My headphone went out of charge. I'm sorry. Okay. You're saying?
All right. So, we could go round and round. So, as definitions go.
We could go round and round.
Yep. All right, definitions go. It's a little annoying because I can hear me.
All right. Because I can hear me.
Is there something we could do to?
No.
Okay, so how about we do this? That's a little better. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Let's go ahead and wrap this. Okay.
This will be difficult for people to listen to hear my voice twice. Could we agree on this? That kink should be allowed at all events. But when it's a family event like Pride Parade, we keep it decent. So that all people can feel comfortable showing up at the parade.
No, I don't think Pride is a gay space, as I said. As long as the people are not actively having, purposefully having sex in front of kids in a family-friendly event where you're not supposed to. But that's where I draw the line on Pride. Even then, I don't kick them out of Pride. I would say, please move it to the 18+ area.
But see,
That's where I draw the line. As I said, we're not going to agree with this thing because I'm very anti-censorship.
right. But see, the one thing I'd like for you to understand is that's where you draw the line. There may be others who don't draw the line.
And that's fine. That's fine by me.
And so I'm saying that there's those of us who draw the line before you, and I believe that there's a proper place time for everything. Pride Parade is not the place to show off your ad, junk, anything else. That's my opinion. So, and I know different. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I do think sexual liberation is a place to express sexuality. That's it.
Hari, I will tell you this. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for being part of it, and I look forward to continue having spirited discussions with you on Facebook.
Okay.
All right.
I had fun too.
All right. Right there, friends. Thanks for joining us today, and until next time, take care. Be safe. And don't have to wear a mask anymore. So, take care.